Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are setting sail into the fascinating story of an absolute industrial titan. We're looking at Cochin Shipyard Limited, a state-owned enterprise that has spent the last 50 years not just building ships, but actively transforming the global maritime landscape. We're going to unpack exactly how a 50-year-old legacy shipyard is reinventing itself for a modern, high-tech, and incredibly green future. It's honestly a masterclass in corporate evolution, and the data we have to show you today is just highly compelling. Let's dive in. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, a legacy set in copper. 2, a record-breaking financial voyage. 3, mastering build and repair. 4, expanding the domestic fleet. And finally, number 5, sailing toward green innovation. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, a legacy set in copper, 50 years of maritime excellence. When you survive and thrive for 5 whole decades in a heavy engineering sector, you aren't just running a business anymore, you are literally participating in nation building. So to mark their golden jubilee, Cochin Shipyard didn't just throw a party. Instead, they built a monument. It's called Terra Maris, a massive 28.5-foot tall sculpture designed to endure for the next 1,000 years. It's got this incredible stainless steel framework draped in exquisite copper sheeting, all meticulously handcrafted by master artisans right there in Kerala. But the design logic behind it, that's what's truly fascinating. It was actually designed using the mathematical golden ratio to capture the convergence of kinetic and potential energies. It stands as a literal physical representation of the creative and constructive energy of their workforce over the last 50 years. And that monument perfectly embodies the shipyard's official motto, always moving forward, always evolving. Now, why does this matter to us? Because that mindset is the ultimate survival tool. Think about it. Whether you're building massive aircraft carriers or running a tiny tech startup, the absolute second you stop evolving, you start sinking. For any organization to reach the 50-year mark, this philosophy of relentless forward momentum is absolutely crucial. Moving right along to Section 2, record-breaking financial voyage, the peaks and valleys. Let's talk numbers, because the sheer scale here is just staggering. 4,820 crores. That represents their highest ever turnover achieved in the 2024 to 2025 financial year. To put that into perspective for you, it was a massive jump from the 3,830 crores they recorded just the previous year. They were aggressively bidding, securing orders left and right, and maximizing their capacity to generate some serious record-breaking top-line growth. And all of that top-line growth, it translated beautifully into a profitability peak. 827 crores represents their highest ever profit after tax for that exact same year, up from 783 crores previously. At this point, their profit margins were incredibly robust. We're looking at a profit before tax margin of 23% and an EBITDA margin of 26%. They were firing on all cylinders. But as we all know, capital markets are always in motion. When we compare those historic 2025 peaks against the latest March 2026 data we have from the sources, we start to see a much more complex picture. While sales did grow slightly to 5,022 crores, the net profit actually dipped down to 717 crores. And perhaps more critically, the company experienced a significant negative free cash flow from operations. We're talking a ratio of negative 136% to operating profits. The market reacted to these changing tides pretty swiftly, resulting in a 32% stock dip over the past year. It's a powerful reality check on just how cyclical and capital-intensive heavy industry can be. Let's move into Section 3 to see how they operate. Mastering build and repair, dual engines of growth. The sheer contrast in their capabilities is wild. On one side, you have their titanic defense triumphs. We're talking about things like the INS Vikrant, India's very first indigenous aircraft carrier, which is basically a floating city of massive scale. And then, on the exact opposite side, you have highly agile commercial offshore vessels like platform supply vessels and anchor handling tugs. They don't just pick one niche. They dominate both, defense and commercial shipbuilding, completely adapting their engineering to suit entirely different oceanic demands. So, the crucial takeaway here is their extreme versatility in ship repair. They've successfully completed well over 2,500 ship repair projects. That ranges from signing a landmark master ship repair agreement to maintain vessels for the United States Navy, all the way to taking on massive commercial overhauls. A prime example is the ONGC Mobile Offshore Drilling Unit, the Sagar Vijay. They didn't just repair the thing, they radically upgraded its drilling capacity from 300 meters all the way down to 900 meters. Now that is serious value addition. All right, on to Section 4, expanding the domestic fleet, Pan-India operations. You definitely can't maintain a dominant market position by just staying put in one place. Cochin Shipyard has completely transformed from a single, centralized yard down in Kochi into a massive hub-and-spoke operation spanning across both coasts of India. This strategy is perfectly reflected in the booming order books of their wholly owned subsidiaries. Udupi CSL over on the west coast and Hooghly CSL on the east coast in West Bengal are pulling in massive contracts. Just to give you an idea, we're talking about 12 heavy-duty 70-ton bollard pull tugs, a massive export order of 8 dry cargo vessels specifically for a client in Norway, plus high-tech hybrid electric catamarans, and a 2,200-ton multi-purpose vessel. They are effectively capturing every single segment of the small and medium vessel market. And finally, let's look at the future in Section 5. Sailing toward green innovation, CSAS, and beyond. Look, the global maritime industry is under immense pressure to decarbonize right now. So to pioneer this future, they created a dedicated new vertical called CSAS, which stands for Strategic and Advanced Solutions. Through their USUS Maritime Startup Scheme, they aren't just keeping things internal with R&D, they are actively funding the wider ecosystem. They've already committed over 5 crores to 11 different startups that specialize in deep tech, artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and eco-materials. They are basically acting as a venture capital arm to fuel maritime innovation. And the coolest part is, the results of this forward thinking are already out there on the water. This is India's very first indigenous hydrogen fuel cell catamaran. It is a completely zero-emission vessel that has now been successfully deployed in Varanasi, complete with its own allied hydrogen fueling infrastructure. It is tangible, floating proof of their massive transition from legacy steel shipbuilding into next-generation green tech. But here's the kicker. They aren't keeping this technology strictly domestic. They are successfully exporting the sustainable innovation to the rest of the world. They recently secured an order from a European client to design and build a hybrid service operation vessel. Equipped with highly advanced hybrid battery systems to slash emissions, this vessel is going to be deployed to service and maintain the booming offshore wind farm market in Europe. Think about that for a second. They are literally building the tools required for the global renewable energy transition. Which brings us to a final, pretty profound thought to close out today's explainer. We've seen their 50-year legacy. We've looked at the intense financial peaks and valleys, and we've explored their cutting-edge green technology. The big question we have to ask ourselves now is, will India's first zero-emission vessels, built by a half-century-old shipyard, actually chart the course for the entire global maritime industry? It is a fascinating prospect, and it really leaves us wondering just how far this legacy is going to sail into an emission-free future. Thanks so much for joining me today, and as always, keep exploring.